everybody, and welcome to SSTI's first webinar of 2012. I hope everybody had a nice holiday and a happy new year. Today's webinar is small buckets of revenue and savings for state DOTs, and the webinar will feature presentations from several SSTI member states on relatively quick and easy to implement ways that state DOTs can adapt to the current fiscal challenges. So these are things that are much easier and quicker to implement than, say, raising the gas tax or doing other politically difficult activities. So we'll be hearing from two people today about changing the way that they plow snow and lay salt. Both Bobby Welke from Michigan and Jerry Younger from Kansas will be talking about that. That's a particularly timely topic given the huge amount of snow we're getting here in Madison now. Glenn McLaughlin in Maryland will talk about the Chart Patrol sponsorship program. And Bob Rocio will be talking about Rhode Island's highway lighting curfew. And a little bit on each of our presenters. Bobby Welke has been working as the Southwest Region Engineer for the Michigan Department of Transportation for the past 15 years. And she's responsible for providing leadership for all MDOT work in the 9-county area of Southwest Michigan. She's worked 28 years for MDOT, primarily in the construction and executive areas. Jerry Younger assumed his duties as State Transportation Engineer and Deputy Secretary of Transportation on March 20th of 2006. Younger accepted that position after serving a year stint as the District 1 engineer overseeing KDOT operations in northeast Kansas. And he started working for KDOT in 1986 following his graduation from the University of Kansas with a degree in civil engineering. Glenn McLaughlin from Maryland is the Deputy Director for Systems Development and Administration at the Maryland State Highway Administration's Office of Chart and ITS Development. He's worked in the transportation industry for 25 years and has been with the State Highway Administration for 22. In his current position, he is responsible for administration, planning, system development, and funding of Maryland's Coordinated Highways Action Response Team, CHART, which is SHA's Highway Management Operations and Intelligent Transportation Systems Program. And our final speaker today, Bob Rocio, is the Managing Engineer of the Traffic Design and Research Section at the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. He's responsible for administering a $30 million annual program and is charged with the mission to ensure that the roadway system is safe and efficient. Besides these tasks, he serves as the State Traffic Engineer and Secretary of the State Traffic Commission. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please type them in your question pane. This is on the right side of your screen. You should see a little box where you can type in questions. If you'll type them in, then we'll handle all the questions at the end of the presentation. We hope to have about 15 or 20 minutes at the end of all these presentations, and we can talk to the panelists. So now I'm going to pass it off to Bobby Welke. We'll be hearing from Bobby first, and then we'll hear from Glenn. Jerry will be going third, and then Bob from Rhode Island will be our fourth speaker. So if any of our presenters have a problem controlling the slides, please let me know. I'm happy to advance them for you, but I'll transfer you the power to do that yourself, and hopefully that'll work. So, Bobby, you should have control right now, and you can lead us off here.
All right. Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of Kirk Steidel, the Director of the Michigan Department of Transportation. I'd like to share with you one Michigan example of a small bucket of savings. As you know, or at least imagine, the winters in Michigan can be pretty tough. So I'd like to open my remarks with painting the picture of a cost of a Michigan winter. I'm sorry, Bill, I'm not able to move those ahead. Could you?
No problem. You can just say slide, and I'll flip it forward for you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, since we're only 1/3 away through our current winter, and it's been a very, very abnormal winter, we've had here in Southwest Michigan 3 frozen winter events as freezing rain winter events, and we've had 4 snowstorms, including one that started Thursday and lasted through Saturday morning. But the snow will be gone by the end of today. It's been raining all night and all day, and it's quite foggy here in Southwest Michigan. So I need to paint the picture of what this typical cost of a winter looks like. So since we're only 1/3 of the way through this winter, I'm going to share with you last winter's experience. As you can see, we allocate 33% of our maintenance budget for a typical winter. However, last winter was not even close to being typical. We spent almost $100 million in our costs to battle those winter storms that we had. It was a long winter. It was tough. Groundhog Day storm was very, very spectacular here. I think because it started in the Plains States and worked its way from the Plains States into the Great Lakes area. There was so much notoriety about the storm that was hitting the Chicago area on January 31st that most people stayed home on February 1st. So it in fact became easy for us to fight the battle because there weren't too much traffic in the way. Everything pretty much was shut down in the south half of the lower part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. So last year we spent 31% of our winter costs were spent on salt. And as all of you know that do have a winter in your bailiwick, the cost of salt is going up tremendously and has over the last 5 years. For every 5 tons of salt we spread, we also estimate we spread about 1 ton of sand, usually not in a mixture. The sand is applied when we have freezing rain type events when you need traction rather than salt to fight the snow itself. So before I dive in this plan of what we're trying to do to save a bucket full of monies, I want to share with you why we work so hard on clearing the roads before, during, and after each winter event. And for all of us, it's all about our economy. We know that if a statewide blizzard shut down all the state and local roads in Michigan, that the economic cost to the disruption of the state has been estimated at $251 million per day. We also estimate that the cost for MDOT, our taxpayers, to plow and keep those roads open on a statewide basis on all the state highways is almost $5 million a day. So we take winter very, very seriously in Michigan. Slide, please, Bill. Bill, could you move the slide? Oh, there you go. Thank you. So what are the things we do to reduce the cost of our winter operations? We have to make sure our snow routes are the right routes, that they're the right lengths and the right locations given the location of our nearest maintenance garage, that we have the right equipment, and that we're working to get that right level of service for each route. We have a 24/7 plan for our major routes, which obviously includes all the freeways and the major arterials, but we have less than that. We want one clear wheel track in each direction on the non-major routes. We need to properly calibrate our equipment and make sure our operators have the appropriate training. But our fourth effort, the one I'm going to spend more time talking about, is we gain savings if we operate and use the best materials and the best application rates, which really involve the speed that our snowplows go. Bill, could you move the slide? So the best material application rates start with understanding how winter operations occur. As you can imagine, during winter events, the operators are blading the snow or the ice off the pavement 100% of the time. We use bottom blades on the bottom of our very, very large trucks to blade the snow off. If you ever see one of the MDOT trucks with those giant blades in front, you know it's a particular nasty, awful blizzard that we're dealing with. So we're blading the snow and the freezing rain 100% of the time. Our trucks are traveling at 45 miles per hour. Salt is used when we need to break that bond of either the frozen water or that snow from the pavement, break that up so then the snow or the ice can be bladed off the roadway. And that bond occurs depending on both the ambient and the pavement temperatures. So we use roughly 50% of the time we estimate that we are actually salting when our operators are out there driving our snow plows. Typically, we're traveling 45 miles per hour just as we're blading, placing salt. We know, though, when we drive at that higher speed, salt actually is bouncing off the roadway. And in our attempt to save monies, we are trying to save the amount of salt placed. So we're actually trying to slow down our trucks to 25 miles per hour. We're trying to save about 10% of that material that is bounced off the roadway, which overall means about 3% of the salt that we would use in any 1 year. So if you look at the salt we used last year, we have an expectation by slowing down our traffic, that small increment from 45 to 25, that we would save $112,000 here in the 9-county Southwest Michigan area. If we can prove that this indeed is a small bucket of savings, here on behalf of the taxpayers in Southwest Michigan, we hope to take this project and go statewide, and using the same analysis, the same typical winter costs of last year, we would predict to save $933,000 based on last winter's salt usage. So if we can save nearly $1 million, we're going to need an awful big, larger bucket to do what we have to do. You can also imagine that with less salt bouncing off the roadways, there's less salt on our slopes in our ditches that certainly have an environmental impact. So that concludes my remarks, and I believe we're going to wait until the end in terms of any type of questions. Is that not true, Bill?
That's correct. Yep. And here is Bobby's contact information. Also, as I forgot to mention before, we'll be putting this recorded webinar up on the SSTI website, and that should be up this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So now we're moving on to Glenn. And Glenn, I'll try and give you the control of this here, and if it doesn't work, then let me know, and I'll be happy to advance the slides for you.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Guess I'm coming through okay here.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you. This is a little different subject than winter snow removal. What I'm going to be talking about is a sponsorship program that we have currently with our highway traffic patrols. A little background, Bill already mentioned CHART is the Coordinated Highways Action Response Team. We've been in Maryland for 20 years, and our mission is to facilitate the communication and coordination of emergency response activities on the highways with our partners. One of the main tools we have for doing that is a fleet of patrol emergency response vehicles. They are, it's civilian, it's not law enforcement. It's to provide services such as motorist assistance, primarily to get people out of hazardous conditions, and leading up to major traffic control at major incident scenes and cleanup. We have about 50 vehicles, and of those, we have about 15 to 20 on the road at any given time. We also have supervisory vehicles, and that's how we get to the 50. So let me see if I can advance the slide here. It's working. Let's see. Sorry. Oh, okay. So the company Travelers Marketing approached us in January of 2010 with the concept of having our patrols be sponsored. At that time, they didn't mention who the sponsor would be, but we, in further discussions, they identified the sponsor as State Farm. We, being a government agency, we couldn't just, say, hey, that sounds great. So we went through an exhaustive search between January 2010 and August 2010, including internet research to see who was out there sponsoring these types of patrols. We contacted the existing patrols we were aware of: Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Florida. And we even issued a request for information with targeted outreach to those types of companies that might be interested in sponsoring other insurance companies, those who are doing other kinds of transportation services. And we really found that the only organization would be the team of State Farm and Travelers Marketing that would be interested in providing the sponsorship of emergency patrols. So we then, informed Travelers Marketing that we would need a formal proposal. It would still be unsolicited because there weren't any other competing organizations. And in September, they submitted a draft, which we then worked and negotiated with them over. And in December of 2010, we signed an agreement for the sponsorship. The proposal included elements such as, of course, co-branding our emergency patrol fleet to provide a balance of our logo and name and the State Farm name on all of our 50 vehicles, installing 60 patrol signs to acknowledge the sponsorship of the patrol and raise the awareness of the existence of the patrols. Developing and distributing joint promotional materials, including a brochure which has an attached comment card, and also emergency patrol driver education sessions and other highway safety events as might be identified. The sponsorship is a 3-year agreement between Maryland and the sponsor, with Travelers Marketing as the agent, with 2 optional 2-year extensions. What we got out of the sponsorship was a revenue to help us advance the objectives of the program. The total for the 3 years was $1,321,700 distributed over the 3 years, and it's important to note that, however, that some of that money was rolled into implementing the elements of the sponsorship, about $300,000. So really, the direct benefit to the state of Maryland was about $1 million spread over 3 years, or about $300,000 to $350,000 per year. One of the things we realized was that if we accepted the money as a direct distribution, it would go into our transportation trust fund, and then it would not actually be directed to benefit the patrol program. So what we did was our leadership asked if it would be possible that the sponsoring team could actually contract to get additional patrols, vehicles, train drivers that they would provide as in-kind, so that it wouldn't be a revenue. And in fact, that also affected the overall agreement because there was no money exchanging hands. It was a exchange of services. It was a different agreement, or a different type of agreement from a legal standpoint. What the $350,000 translated into was covering 2 additional patrols over our base number of patrols, Monday through Friday, for 16 hours per day, which roughly equates to about a 10% increase in our patrol program. It was also outlined that the sponsorship would not impact how the state does our business, that they would not ask us to do things operationally different, that they were just a seamless extension of our patrol program. Some of the other the benefits that were identified, the graphics that were installed are reflective and help to identify the vehicle more as a patrol vehicle, and also improve the visibility of the of the vehicle. And I have an example I'll show you here in a minute with pictures. We also, the 60 signs, as I mentioned, not only were to acknowledge the sponsor, but to make motorists aware that the routes were patrolled and that services were available. And also the outreach to, again, raise the visibility of the program, including the brochure and comment card that was providing feedback to the program. So just felt that although there was a lot of text there in the previous slides, thought people might like to see some of the elements of the sponsorship. As I mentioned, on the upper left-hand quadrant there is one of our vehicles wrapped with the sponsorship graphics. The upper right shows some of the visibility marking chevrons similar to what emergency vehicles have to make our vehicles more visible and improve safety. Lower left is a picture of one of the 60 signs that we had installed. And the lower center is a shot of the comment or the brochure with comment card, and then the lower right is just an example of some of our uniform, and it's kind of small, but the red patch there is the State Farm logoing. So that is essentially what we have done in terms of generating some small bucket of revenue support, or at least in-kind support for our program.
Great. Thanks very much, Glenn. And now we'll be moving on to Jerry Younger's presentation. Jerry, I'm going to try and transfer control over to you here. So let me know if it's not working and I can take over.
All right, great. Thanks, Bill. When I was asked to kind of talk about this, I was a little bit sheepish about it because, quite honestly, this isn't necessarily a new initiative for us. It's one that's really just us following our policy better than we have in the past, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my presentation. And Bill, you're going to have to help me. Next slide.
Okay.
Maybe to put this in context, and I know our Michigan folks will scoff at this a little bit, but just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here in Kansas during our winter snow season, our weather conditions vary significantly from the southeast corner of our state to the northwest corner of our state. If you look, Goodland, which is in the northwest corner of our state, on average gets about 3 feet of snow. As you move towards the southeast corner of our state, well under half of that. But still, we do get snow. Now, I will say, Bobby had a good graphic there that kind of showed the big blue blob of winter weather there, and if you remember what that looks like, that big blue blob was always north and east of Kansas this season, and that's kind of been our experience. Although we've had a fairly significant snowfall in the southwest quadrant of our state a couple weeks before Christmas, really we haven't had any sort of snow. And I know I'm tempting the winter weather gods in saying this, but you know, it's been real beneficial for us. We've saved quite a bit of money. So next slide. Next slide, Bill.
Yeah, I'm trying to put it forward here, and it seems to. There we go.
As I said, this really isn't something new that we implemented. It's really following a policy that we had on the books. But if you kind of look at our experience over the last 20 years, we've always overperformed in our snow and ice removal. And, you know, that was a reflection of a whole lot of things, primarily our employee base. You know, they took a lot of pride and still do in the snow removal side of things. And essentially, we just worked 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day until we had bare pavement. And, you know, that necessarily didn't follow our policy as far as working those sort of shifts and the overtime associated with it. But, you know, that's what we did for many, many, many years. We could do that because, honestly, our salary budgets would allow that to be done. If you looked at the overtime associated with that, our salary budgets would allow that. Well, obviously, things change for everybody, change for us too. So next slide, Bill. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when things started tanking for us, at least in Kansas, as far as state general fund revenues, although KDOT is supported out of a separate state highway fund, we were asked to be a team player and help shore up some of the problems that were being seen at the state general fund level. So we gave up significant amount of money to help shore up that the shortage at our state general fund level. And a chunk of that came out of projects, construction type of projects, but also a chunk of it came out of our own operating budget, those things that pay salaries, those things that buy sand, salt, that buy fuel, and those sort of things. So as we got to that point a number of years ago and had to start managing more stringently, even a lower number from our agency operating budget, we revisited our policy that was already on the books and began adhering to it more stringently. And one of the things in our policy is that once we reach a certain level of service for a certain road, we basically will not spend any overtime hours in going any further. Whatever it takes to get snow totally removed, we'll do that under normal work hours. And more specific than that, as we look at shoulders on our routes, all our routes, those certainly ones that fall under that, you know, as far as clearing shoulders, that's something we'll do during our normal work hours and won't expend any overtime on that unless it's causing some unique safety problem or something like that. Next slide, Bill. So just a little more detail about our policy, and again, this is one that we've had for many, many, many years. You know, we have all our routes, state highway and U.S. routes and interstate routes broken into classes, 3 classes, and I'll show you a slide here, I think next, kind of showing how those are broken out throughout the state. But with each class, obviously the level of service associated with it, and then, you know, priorities. And within this policy, then there's even more detail about how much coverage is on each route, how many times we intend to cycle through each route on a 12-hour shift, and those sort of things. But generally, this is our policy that details out the level of service. And again, once we reach that level of service on these type of routes or the class of routes, that's when we would stop the overtime clock, and anything that was necessary beyond that or any further snow removal, snow and ice type of activities would be done during our normal work hours. Okay, next, Bill. And as I said, we have just under 10,000 centerline miles of highway that's KDOT is responsible for in Kansas. About 25,000 lane miles we're responsible for, but just under 10,000 centerline miles. And you can kind of see how the breakout in the different classes are, 1, 2, and 3 throughout the state, and each one of the different colors is a maintenance sub-area, a maintenance crew, and the roads within their areas are the ones that they're responsible for. We have 574 trucks, dump trucks that are outfitted with plows and spreaders, and you know, you can do the arithmetic to have somebody in those trucks for 2 12-hour shifts a day. We have over 1,100 operators of some sort or another that operate those trucks. Okay, next, Bill. Unlike a lot of state DOTs, we don't separate out a separate budget for wintertime activities. It's all kind of folded into our overall state agency operating budget. Although we do carve out, after the fact, we do carve out the cost of those activities during a winter snowstorm. For us, we spend about $17 million a year on average. If you look at our 10-year average, we spend about $17 million a year on snow and ice activities. Now, that includes people working regular hours as well as overtime and the commodities associated with it and things like that. Our snowstorm that happened, as I mentioned earlier, that hit the southwest quadrant of our state here before Christmas, we spent about $1 million on snow and ice activities on it. So, and I can't I can't chime in enough on what Michigan had said about the economic impact. That's a story we continue to try to tell, is that it's important that we have the resources to do snow and ice activities because of the economic impact that that has. So as we began to go more towards and adhere more closely to our policy, of course, we did a little bit of PR out front with that. We tried to, whenever we were provided a venue, to let people know that they may see a change in what they've come to expect for many, many years, that the road conditions may look different than they had in the past, at least initially after a storm occurs. So we tried to get out in front of that and get the information out before we actually begin doing it. And that all went relatively well. We haven't really received any great complaints as far as level of service or what people see compared to what they had seen in the past and what they were expecting. Our employees, sometimes it was hard getting them on board because they were so used to overperforming and overachieving. And so we sometimes had to rein them in. But you know, now that we've been at it for 4 or 5 years, it's just become second nature to us. So with that, that concludes my presentation.
Well, great. Thank you, Jerry. And now for our final presenter, Bob Rocio from Rhode Island. We'll be talking about their lighting curfew. And Bob, I'm going to try and transfer control over to you, and we'll see if it works. If not, let me know, and I'm happy to advance the slides for you.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Bill. Okay, this is a result out of from my 2008 state budget deficit that was very significant. All the departments were asked to cut 10% of their operating expenses. One area that jumped out at us was electricity costs, because it was $3 million, and that was roughly 10% of our operating and maintenance budget. We looked at lighting curfews among other alternatives, such as LED conversion. There were ARA funds available at the time, grant money. We did a study. The technology we found was not quite there yet. We also looked at solar and wind installations. We had lots of right-of-way to install them, but that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. So the low-hanging fruit really was lighting curfews. By way of background, let me just see. Not working. I'm sorry, Bill. Can you advance the slide, please?
Got it.
Good work, Bill. Okay.
I changed it for you, so you can just.
Oh, okay.
I'll move it up.
All right, great. Again, it's basically our lighting systems that we own are primarily on our limited access highways and freeways. We do have some on secondary roads, not much, and we have no state-owned lighting on local roadways. Slide, please. There are benefits of roadway lighting, as you can see, but if you go to the next slide, you can see there are also drawbacks. We've had various groups and organizations, I should say, actually lobbying to either reduce or eliminate roadway lighting. So that we took that as a sign that this is something that's viable, it could be done. And also, again, the maintenance costs. While all our electricity cost is $3 million, the roadway lighting costs per year were $2 million. So there was an area of potential savings there of significant savings. Next slide, please. So we had a couple of choices. Eliminate the use of roadway lighting. We tried that, believe it or not, in the past about 15 years ago. It didn't end well. We had a fiery crash. It was a fatality, and we had to reactivate the lights. It actually cost us money to de-energize and bring the lights back up. So we thought maybe if we take a strategic approach and we just look at reducing lighting on the highways and implementing a lighting curfew, it might be a viable solution. Next slide, please. There was some outcry initially, you know, safety concerns, crime prevention. They were predicting a lot of increase in crashes, and we took that into account, but we moved forward with a pilot study, and we went slow. We took a go slow approach. Slide, please. We picked a few roadways. We installed time clocks, programmable time clocks, which, by the way, if you go to the next slide, I should have backtracked. Lighting curfews are allowed by the AASHTO roadway lighting guide. It's there are warrants based on volume and speed for lighting where lighting is appropriate and should be placed, but during certain hours of the middle morning, late night, middle morning hours, you'll see that the volumes are very low, crashes are very low. So again, we implemented that study phase on a few roadways. Next slide, please. And we initiated that study phase. We looked at a 3-month period, the same 3-month period as the implementation phase, so it's an apples-to-apples comparison. If you go to the next slide, please. We looked at traffic volumes, crash data, speed data, and cost savings. Are we going to realize a savings here? And if you go to the next slide, we just have some tables to show how drastically the volumes drop during the hours that we ended up selecting, which were from midnight to 5 a.m. during the, Sunday through Thursday, and 2 to 5 on Friday and Saturdays on weekend nights because of, you know, the bars, people tend to stay out later. But the data showed that the traffic volumes and the crashes were actually very low. So it's a targeted approach. Slide, please. One more, please. Next slide, please. This is the crash data. We looked at the crash data during the curfew hours where we eliminated it. Did not change, virtually no significant statistical change at all. Next slide, please. Same thing with the speed data, no statistical change. And if you go to the next slide, we found that there was a substantial cost savings, approximately 33% cost savings, and it makes sense because it's a third of the hours that we're turning off those lights for. So it did pan out. Next slide, please. And we'll run through this very quickly. So we expanded the lighting curfew. We did a full study. If you go to the next couple of slides, a couple more slides. Let's. And that previous slide with the graphics just plots out the crashes. It shows where the lighting was, and it also shows the red dots are the crashes, and the green lights are the lights that were. So we only looked at the crashes during the curfew hours where the actual luminaires were turned off. Next slide, please. Again, this is if we can just go, actually running low on time, if you just want to go to the conclusion, last page, please. What we found is it ended up being a very good approach to save money, unlike the last experience we had, especially if it's done strategically. You target the overnight hours. It's where traffic volumes are low, crashes are low. It's a lot better approach than, say, what some of our communities did here in Rhode Island, was to turn off every other light, which actually made things worse. And it's definitely better than a wholesale removal of lighting during all the hours. Believe it or not, we had a positive response from the public. The few complaints we had were actually from, we found, ended up coming from the lighting vendors themselves. But to be perfectly frank, most motorists don't even know we're implementing a lighting curfew. Most people aren't out during those hours of 12 to 5 or 2 to 5, and the savings was substantial, and it did help us meet that 10% or $3 million cut. We did it in other ways as well, but this was a big portion of it. And just as a side note, we saved much more money by doing an energy audit. We were found that we were being double charged and overcharged for a lot of our roadway lighting and traffic signals, and we saved another couple of $1 million there, but that's for another presentation. Thanks.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Bob, and thanks to all of the rest of our panelists. So right now we've got some time here, and we're happy to take additional questions from our audience. And let's see here. You can type in your questions, and we will we'll go through them and direct them to the appropriate speaker. So first of all, we've got a question for Jerry Younger. And did you have to deal with culture change with employee loss of overtime income?
Well, yeah, as I said, you know, we had to deal with some culture change in a whole lot of ways. Just first of all, just our employees were so used to kind of this overachieving, overperforming. But the overtime issue was something that came up, and I can say that, you know, our winters are pretty sporadic, or I shouldn't say sporadic, but inconsistent. And, you know, certainly this winter is a prime example. I mean, I've got a number of our equipment operators this year that are singing the blues because there really hasn't been an opportunity for overtime this winter. We've really only had one snowstorm, and that's been it. And in this part of the state, there hasn't been any snow whatsoever. So, yeah, it's been something we've had to deal with. Although I'd say by and large, there was maybe some complaining about it, but by and large, at the end of the day, our employees, our operators always knew that there wasn't any or shouldn't be any expectation of overtime. It's just whatever the weather deals out to you.
All right. So again, if anybody has questions, please type them into the box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get to them next. But here's a question for Bobby. I was wondering, have you had any opposition from drivers about being, say, slowed down by these plows moving at lower speeds, drivers getting stuck behind those trucks?
Right now, because of this very abnormal winter situation, in fact, I think of only 3 snowstorms that we've had this winter season. We have not got complaints from the general public about that. We did have some pushback, speaking of Jerry's comments about culture and overtime. We had some pushback from our drivers about driving what they thought was too slow and that they would be rear-ended. And that has not yet happened. So we will be measuring crashes and accounting for those. But as those of you in the winter climates know, it's tough to measure one winter storm against the next, let alone one winter season against the next. But we do have to hold ourselves accountable about crashes and what we have to do. And this is almost, I'll go back to something Jerry said, something that's happened in the 80s. We were driving 25 miles an hour laying down salt. We added new technology that allowed us to drive faster, but we're still testing how much salt is being bounced off the roadway and trying to bring that back into what is a better situation for us. So crashes from the public, no. concern about it, yes.
All right, and there's another question also for you, Bobby. We have a question, do you monitor the application rate per truck? And if so, what's your recommended application rate?
The application rates are set within each of the truck systems. We have Dickie Johns and other types of systems that are set into the trucks, and they are monitored. We do get reports after the fact, but I don't think they're electronically monitored. When the webinar gets posted either tonight or tomorrow, there's a gentleman's name below my name who works in our Lansing office who can provide quite a bit more data on the technology that we have available and what we do monitor. His name is Tim Crows, and his email address is going to be in that slide that you'll see hopefully later.
Great. Thank you, Bobby. We've got a question for Bob. Have there been any motorist complaints about the lighting curfew in Rhode Island?
Surprisingly, not many at all. The main type of complaints that we did receive were actually residents or you know, people who lived along these roadways saying we missed a segment of roadway. They were actually complaining that we didn't turn off the roadway lighting adjacent to their homes or neighborhoods, and that far outweighed any complaint we received from the motoring public, and they've virtually all complaints have virtually been eliminated for, I'd say, for a good year now.
Oh, and I just wanted to ask you also, how long ago was it that Rhode Island tried turning off all of the lights, the last experiment that went poorly?
I have to say it was a good 15, 16 years ago that we tried it again, and it wasn't easy to do, to turn off all the lighting systems, and it didn't last long, and it ended up costing us, I believe, over $1 million by the time we turned off all the lights, and we couldn't get them back on. Some of these systems were pretty old, and then we had to initiate many repairs to get them back on. But the time clock method, programmable time clock, seems to be working out well.
A lot of headaches there, it sounds like. And we got a question for Glenn. I was wondering, what sort of feedback have you gotten from state residents about the Chart Patrol sponsorship and State Farm's involvement or anything? Have you heard much from the public on that?
No, in actual fact, almost no feedback from the public. Occasionally, we get comments from our drivers that they, you know, when they're helping the motorists, they say, "Oh, we didn't know that State Farm does this." As in, they thought that the trucks were actually owned and provided by State Farm. And but you know, in terms of any pattern of people, you know, being concerned or wondering about why we're, you know, doing it, haven't seen that.
All right. Well, if there are any other questions, please type them in now. Otherwise, I want to thank all of our panelists. This has been really great to get a little snapshot into some of the activities your DOTs are taking to adjust to the fiscal conditions and save a little money where you can. And hopefully we won't have too much more of that snow and ice we were discussing here. But thanks a lot, and we'll have this webinar up on the website probably later today, and if not, then tomorrow morning. So thanks again to all our panelists and the viewers. Bye-bye.